I was adopted as an infant into a Christian home. My mother was the spiritual rock of our family. I loved going to church, loved Sunday school, I loved to sing, all the songs. I just remember being a really happy time in our home. When I was 16, my 19-year-old brother was killed in a car accident, and it shook our family for sure. The policeman came to our house. It was the middle of the night, 3:30 in the morning, and I'll never forget just going to bed that night thinking, okay, that was just an awful dream. That was an awful dream, and and going through the stages of grief, really getting stuck in that anger at God. Like, why would He do that? Why would He, take away my brother? It didn't make a whole lot of sense that God, a loving God, which was what I grew up knowing, why would He do that? My parents, we all handled our grief a little differently. My mother just was very sad, but still strong in her faith. My father, I think it brought him closer to the Lord, and for me, really, I rebelled and I turned from the Lord. I still attended church and I still read my Bible, but it was definitely more out of obligation than a love and a desire to know God and learn about Him. I was definitely beginning to distance myself more and more and just keep God in a little part of my life that I was comfortable having Him in. And I finished college. I decided to live at home and go to graduate school, and then during that time is when I met Kirk. The first time he was to meet my family was Thanksgiving, and he met both my parents, I believe, for the first time. And then I went up to meet his parents, and that next day my father died. So it was very sudden. It was a heart attack. And after my father died, I feel like that experience really cemented my relationship with Kirk and just relationship with my extended family. And I think it was also a time when we began to really explore our faith. It wasn't long after that we were married, and we joined a church and were involved in a small group. And Kirk, I really do think his faith, and he had a desire to know God. And I think during that and those experiences really got him going, which encouraged me to really dig deep and discover what it was, what was my relationship with God, what, kind of what I had experienced as a child. What did I feel about it now? I think I kind of lived through my parents' faith and never really explored the Bible or asked questions or really, I was a Christian on the outside, but I really was lost on the inside. Shortly after there, I found out I was pregnant, had uneventful first half of the pregnancy, and then through a typical screen found out that something looked abnormal, an AFP screen. So we went in for an amniocentesis and a level 2 sonogram, and found out there was a significant chromosome abnormality with the baby, and they said that the baby wouldn't make it. That was not compatible with life. During the pregnancy, I was completely broken. Knew that I had no control over what would be, that this baby was completely in God's hands, and I recommitted my life to the Lord. We made the decision not to terminate, to continue the pregnancy, and shortly after her due date, the baby was born and just lived a few hours. I feel like after we lost the baby, I changed in that I started to rely on the Lord, and I had a desire to know Him, which I really hadn't really experienced before. We adopted Carson after struggling with infertility, and he blessed us with Caleb and then with Kelsey. At the point I was pregnant with Kelsey, my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I was in the midst of a high-risk pregnancy. We didn't know for sure if she was going to be okay, and didn't know if my mom was going to die in a month or in a year or 10 years. But I remember I had a journal that I kept, and I remember writing, Lord, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but You do, and I just give it to You. So the big difference was having faith, was having peace, and Him giving me strength to get through it. A month before Kelsey was to be born, it was my mother's birthday, which is today, and I just had this opportunity to fall into my lap where I could fly home and let her see Caleb, who she hadn't seen but maybe a couple times. So we went up there, and I remember her saying, if I died tomorrow, it would be okay, but I know she really wanted to see Kelsey. That was just her. She decided to go through radical chemotherapy just to see Kelsey, just to extend her life that long. So Kelsey was born. We came back. Kelsey was born, and while I was in the hospital, her doctor, she was also in the hospital in New York, and her doctor contacted me and said, we just think the world of your mom, and she's really not doing great, and she would like to see this baby, so I want to arrange for her to see the baby. And we were able to make it happen. The two hospitals coordinated their efforts, and she was able to see Kelsey through a video conference. So that was just incredible, and I know that was just God just blessing her that much so that she could see the baby. And the next day she died. And although that was just a terribly sad time, it just seemed so sovereign that she lived to see the baby, and which was what she wanted. We went up for my mom's funeral, which was about 6 days after she was born, and they called us. I think she was 9 days old. They called us to say that her screen was off pretty significantly, that they did in the hospital, and that we had to take her to the nearest pediatric endocrinologist, which was in Syracuse. And at that time, was kind of things started to unfold about her health. That she had some different issues that arose, and so they decided to do some screening on her to see if there was some kind of chromosome abnormality, and in fact there was. She has what's called a partial trisomy 6, and it's very rare. There aren't really any case studies that can say exactly what she's going to be like. We went to a geneticist, and he's just told us expect delays. Get her in therapy, do this, kind of give us a regimen to follow, see these specialists. But we really didn't know what that was going to mean for our lives. We saw Kelsey as just a little blessing, and always just a sweet little baby. But it was a complicated world, having 2 young boys and a baby. Her first year was tough. I was still mourning the loss of my mother, going to all these therapies and having tiny children. But the difference now in my life, or at that time in my life, compared to where I was when my brother died, I didn't rest in my own strength. My strength came from the Lord, and it was not on my own at all. I had absolutely none of my own at that time. I guess I've learned that God is faithful. And although at the time it may seem unbearable, He will give you the strength to get through it, and He will use that. And you may not know how in this lifetime, but if it does nothing other than, for me, bring you to Him, or bring you to your knees and help you to see your need for a Savior, then what could be better than that?